As the Minister for Education, I welcome you to this NTC portal where you are undertaking your training. There's a popular saying that there's no place like home. I venture to say that there's no place like a safe school. Place where children feel welcome and they can't wait to get there, to meet with their teachers. They want to make sure that they come to school and they are put under the care of loving individuals that will continue the love that they bring from home. In order to ensure that we transform education in our nation, in order to ensure that education meets its rightful role, that is, transformation of the economy and the society of our nation, we have to ensure that children feel safe. One aspect of safety that I'm going to talk about is sexual harassment. My colleague teachers and other education workers understand that when the children come to you, you are to treat them with care, respect, and love. And that does not include sexual harassment. Advances on children of sexual nature is something that we have to run away from because it can destroy our career for the rest of our lives. So from grooming to sexual harassment, avoid it. Create a better future for yourself as a professional and understand that the children who have been entrusted to your care were entrusted to your care because the parents and the government believe that you are responsible adults. I have no doubt in my mind that all of you are going to abide by these new guidelines. Be that kind of teacher that you love to be remembered by the children. Leave a legacy for your school, leave a legacy for society, be remembered as a caring teacher and education worker. I wish you all the best throughout the training program. You'll be certified. There will be assurance by GES that you truly know how to keep children safe after your training. At your PLCs, you have further engagement with your head of school to assure yourself and your colleagues that the protection of children is of primary importance to you. Good luck on your training program. I wish you all the best.
The management of Ghana Education Service is extremely happy about this introduction of mandatory online sexual harassment training for all of our teachers. In the service, we are very much particular about professionalism of our teachers, which is why we introduced the Code of Conduct to regulate the conduct of all our staff across the country. The sexual harassment training, which is going to be done online and going to be done mandatorily by all teachers across the country, it's a feather in our cap. We believe strongly that the introduction of this mandatory online sexual harassment training is going to support us, is going to help us to understand what sexual harassment is all about, to understand how to handle same, and to even know how to deal with it when we are confronted with one. We together as management are very much excited about it and want to say that we are very much committed to making it work and committed to making our teachers professionals.
Hello. As part of the Ministry of Education's pragmatic efforts to make our schools safe for effective teaching and learning, the Ghana Education Service has come up with a mandatory online program for all teachers to equip them on detailed information on sexual harassment. This program is divided into 3 phases. The first one is understanding what sexual harassment is, the reporting procedures, and then the last one is the support to the victims and disciplinary actions. This is a clarion call to all teachers to be part of this move. Thank you for taking part in this all-important program.
Dear teachers, I greet you from National Teaching Council headquarters. As you all know, it is very, very essential to equip teachers with the right skills, knowledge, and attitude to create a safe learning environment for all learners. To avoid sexual harassment in schools and among professionals, there is a need for us as teachers to go through this mandatory sexual harassment program, which will earn us CPD points and also help us to equip our skills to avoid sexual harassment in the school environment, thereby promoting safe environment for all learners. As professionals, it also enhances our competencies to be proud of ourselves. After all, you add a value to yourself. Let's log on and read more to empower ourselves. God bless us all. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Deborah Tubra. You are welcome to the Sexual Harassment Awareness and Prevention Training for Teachers. This course is sectioned into 3 modules with learning outcomes for each module. It's an estimated 3 to 4 hours of learning. It contains a downloadable version of the GES guidelines for addressing sexual harassment in secondary education institutions. The course also includes a range of assessments to engage teachers. And at the end of this course, teachers will be awarded CPD accreditation points. For Module 1, we would be looking at understanding sexual harassment, and that builds the foundation for the entire course. Our learning objectives under this module is to ensure that by the end of the module, learners will be able to understand what constitutes sexual harassment. We also aim to ensure that you are able to demonstrate adequate knowledge of the types of sexual harassment and examples of the types, and to identify the impact of sexual harassment on victims and others in the education environment. We also aim to ensure that learners understand what constitutes consent and what doesn't constitute consent. So now let's go into what is sexual harassment. So let's pay particular attention to what constitutes sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is any form of treatment that involves unwanted sexual advances, requests, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. And for the avoidance of doubt, any conduct of a sexual nature that is unwarranted by an individual, that constitutes sexual harassment. And also a conduct must be sexual in nature and be unwanted or unwelcome to be described as sexual harassment. So take note of the key words. The conduct must be sexual in nature. It must be unwanted or unwelcome to be described as sexual harassment. And it's important that we also go through the GES guideline for addressing sexual harassment in schools. So let's do a very quick run through the Code of Professional Conduct of the Ghana Education Service. And this code states that no employee shall directly or indirectly be involved in anything that may constitute sexual harassment of a pupil or student. So remember, we've already gone into the construction of sexual harassment, and by now you know what sexual harassment is. Secondly, the code also stipulates that any staff who has carnal knowledge of any female or male pupil or student of any age, with or without his or her consent, shall be guilty of professional misconduct. Thirdly, no staff shall under any circumstance show any form of inordinate affection to any pupil or student. And inordinate affection implies the expression of love or likeness with ulterior motive. Fourthly, no staff shall have any carnal knowledge of any pupil or student in his or her own school or in any pre-tertiary educational institution with or without his or her consent. Now, let's go into the types of sexual harassment. First, hostile environment sexual harassment. This is unwanted sexual conduct that makes a student or staff member's environment unpleasant or uncomfortable. When an individual experiences these unwanted advances, which may or can affect them emotionally, physically, or psychologically, then their environment becomes unfriendly and hostile. Examples include unnecessary and unwanted pet names such as sweetie, baby, girlfriend, boyfriend, my wife, my husband, etc. There are also unnecessary and unwanted nicknames which are usually based on physical features of the individual. And some could be breastina, tundra, back axil, sexy, atom, etc. Another example is intrusive, sexually explicit questions, or asking personal questions about a person's sexual life, such as their sexual preferences or how many times they've had sex. There could also be the spreading of rumors about a person's sexuality, sexual activity, or speculating about previous sexual experiences. Secondly, we want to look at quid pro quo sexual harassment. And this occurs when a person in a position of authority or power makes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other sexual demands in exchange for some form of academic or job benefits, or threatens negative consequences related to one's academics or employment. The third type of sexual harassment is retaliation sexual harassment. This happens when an individual encounters unfavorable consequences following their refusal of sexual proposition or advances, or reporting harassment, or aiding another person in reporting a complaint. So retaliation is what happens when an individual encounters unfavorable consequences because of, one, their refusal of a sexual proposition or advance, two, they are reporting sexual harassment, or three, aiding another person in reporting a complaint. Sexual harassment manifests in numerous ways. It can be verbal, physical, visual or audiovisual, and in recent times, sexual harassment occurs via internet or in the cyberspace. So having looked at the three main types of sexual harassment, we now want to look at the impacts of sexual harassment. And many do not appreciate the dire consequences of sexual harassment. So we ask ourselves, what are the impacts of sexual harassment? Sexual harassment can have very profound and damaging impacts on individuals, organizations, and society broadly. It negatively impacts the physical, psychological, and emotional well-being of individuals, reduces productivity, and undermines safe environments, and so on and so forth. So to summarize our learning so far, remember we've looked at what constitutes sexual harassment. And we've said that sexual harassment includes unwanted advances, verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature which can occur in various forms. And we've looked at the types of sexual harassment, and mainly hostile environment sexual harassment, quid pro quo sexual harassment, and retaliation sexual harassment. So we have also looked at some details of these main types of sexual harassment. And we've said that hostile environment harassment is an unwelcome conduct which makes learning or working environments uncomfortable, including unwanted nicknames, inappropriate questions, etc. With regards to quid pro quo harassment, we've said that it includes unwanted sexual behavior used as a transactional tool for benefits with it being unacceptable, even if consensual. And finally, retaliation sexual harassment relates to unfavorable consequences one faces after refusing a sexual proposal or reporting harassment, such as social isolation or poor appraisal. Now let's go into some facts and myths surrounding sexual harassment in educational institutions. And first of all, we want to go into the facts and myths around consent. It is important to emphasize that engaging in any form of sexual activity between a teacher and a learner, even if the learner is of legal age and gives consent, is considered professional misconduct according to the GES Code of Professional Conduct. Carnal knowledge and inordinate affection, which implies the expression of love or likeness with ulterior motive, as referenced by the Code of Conduct, is unethical and inappropriate in all educational settings, regardless of the age of consent or legal circumstances. In the context of GES educational institutions, consent does not equal permission. Consent does not equal permission. Please take note of this. Now let's look at certain myths surrounding sexual harassment in educational institutions, and then we'll go into the facts on these subjects. It is commonly believed that a learner is capable of giving consent, but this is a myth. The fact remains that engaging in any form of sexual activity between a teacher and a learner, even if the learner is of legal age and gives consent, is considered professional misconduct according to the GES Code of Professional Conduct. Carnal knowledge or inordinate affection, which implies the expression of love or likeness with ulterior motive, as referenced by the Code of Conduct, is unethical and inappropriate in all educational settings, regardless of the age of consent or legal circumstances. In other words, in the context of GES educational institutions, consent does not equal permission. So there's also myths around dressing when it comes to sexual harassment. It is commonly believed that when girls or women wear revealing clothing, which is sometimes referred to as provocative dressing, then they are inviting sex or they are asking for it. And this is why they become victims of sexual assaults. But the actual fact is that the desire to exert authority over another person leads to crimes of violence and control like rape and sexual assaults. The so-called provocative attire or even flirtatious actions do not necessarily invite unwanted sexual activity. Sexual assault occurs when someone is coerced into non-consensual sexual acts, regardless of how that person is dressed or behaves. There's also the myth around female attractiveness. And this is commonly framed around the fact that only young or attractive women experience violence. The fact remains that sexual assault is a crime of power and control. Perpetrators frequently pick victims they believe to be the most open to attack and over whom they think they can exert control over. And so it's not just about attractive women or girls. When we have this myth, then it's easy for us to exclude children, men and boys, and persons with disability who are also sexually abused. Because they do not fit the stereotype of the victim or the typical victim of an attractive woman, others can decide not to report the assault due to the very myths and assumptions about what an average victim of sexual assault should be. We would also talk about myths relating to women and victimhood of sexual offenses. And this myth is framed around the fact that women do not commit sexual offenses. Only men do. Facts remains that men more frequently rape and sexually abuse women and children. However, women do commit acts of sexual violence against men, children, and other women. Therefore, believing and listening to all victims and survivors is important. The culprit always bears full accountability, shame, and blame regardless of who they are. Next, we'll look at the myth around yes or no. There's the assumption that when they say no, women frequently mean yes, but they play the hard-to-get game. This is a myth. The fact is that regarding sex, women and girls should always be believed, just like men and boys are. Everybody has the right to alter their mind when engaging in sexual activity, and only they have the authority to determine what they desire. So respect someone's preferences if they say no. Finally, we'll look at a myth also around the assumption that harassment will go away if you disregard it, or harassment will stop if you disregard it. The fact is that it will not go away. According to research, ignoring the conduct is unsuccessful since harassers typically do not cease on their own. Moreover, ignoring such behavior can even be interpreted as support or encouragement. Therefore, harassment must be stopped. And so we have looked through the myths, and it's important for us to know that these myths are not real, and they must not be used as excuses for harassment. We should take note of the facts around dressing, that a woman or is not justified to harass because one is dressed in a particular way. We should take note of the fact that victims of sexual harassment are not only the so-called attractive women, but children and others may be also victims of harassment. We should take note of the fact that when a woman says yes, she means yes. And equally when she says no, she means no. No, it's not the same as yes. We would now transition to take some fun assessments to see how we understand what we have been doing so far.